envisioning more of us just having a strict one-on-one, or did you want to also get other people who might be joining here involved as well?
I'm open for whatever. Honestly, there was just like we were talking on my server, and I had all these questions pop up in my head, and I was like, you know what? Instead of just putting these down in a text chat, let's go live and just talk about it. And I thought it'd be a fun little impetus to have a conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Let's just
if people want to come up and join us, we can do that too. I'm totally open. So
okay. We'll go with the flow and we'll see what happens then. All right. Cool. So with that being said, do you want to kind of frame that of how this came about, why we're talking here?
mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I think it started with you posting a video. You asked me if you could post a video. You posted it. I watched it. I enjoyed it. And then, so what happened? I think some other people asked you some questions that, were maybe presumptive, maybe not. I don't know.
Maybe,
But
yeah.
then that led me to kind of ask some questions like why you seem to focus on that topic so much. And I think you said religion was one of your heavy topics before you kind of fell away from that topic, and now this is something that you like to cover. And then you mentioned harm reduction, and that really sparked a lot of questions in my head. And I was like, how do those, so I was like, how do those two things relate, to you, harm reduction, and say, for instance, gender affirming care or, or the like. And I was just like, well, why don't we just talk about this? Why don't we just, have a conversation and talk
Gotcha.
about it and use it for content. So that's kind of where I left it off, and I'm happy we're here. It's good to see you again. It's been a while. What
Yeah.
was the last one we did was earlier this year on my channel, right? I think, or was it maybe the end of
Maybe.
last year?
I don't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah.
In all honesty, I think it was.
And
I
then
think
we
it was
had
cold out.
yeah, and we met each other. I think well before that. You and I did one on nihilism. That was pretty cool. I appreciated you giving me a platform for doing that. So
Yeah,
it's good to
that was
see you.
cool.
Good to be here again. Nice to
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah, you too. Yeah, so it all kind of started with that video, and I really was excited to post that. I was pretty pleased with how that video turned out. And for anyone wondering, it's my most recent upload. If you're watching this on YouTube, it will be the one right before this. And it was good. It was one of those moments where it was like I think everybody was really genuine in that conversation. I don't think anybody was trying to pull a fast one. Um, yeah, it was a little bit sad though because they both expressed how their families were abusive. I guess would be the best way to put it. There was definitely at least one abusive act on for both of them, which I suspect there was probably more. Um, but yeah, it was really nice. Um, yeah, I wish that there was some comments on your server, and then some on Reddit too. And I really suspect that a lot of those people didn't actually watch the video, just because I- maybe it'd be better in your words, but what do you when you were watching the video? What do you think? What did you think about it, Brian? I guess would be my question.
um, I agree with you. I think they were genuine people. I really enjoyed both people that were talking with you and their perspectives. I really thought they had insightful perspectives. I was kind of what spawned me off on some other questions is like what you took out from that, like, um, but other things were like there was nobody representing some of the other positions, and you kind of took up the mantle of representing those positions a little bit, and maybe that would be interesting, maybe not. Maybe it could go south really quickly with counter narratives there. Um, Yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't think anybody overreached anything. People pretty much used their personal experiences and said, "This is my experience of this," or this is and was my experience of this, and this is how I feel in this moment." Or the other person, geez, she was the one who was saying like, basically it seemed like she was more for autonomy, like making your own choices of your own body, and she's not part of that the gender affirming care need community. But she's like, if people need that as part of their care or whatever, that's their body, their business, yeah. And I liked
Yeah.
both of those positions. um so
Oh,
but
cool.
yeah, then it got into then that's when it kind of made me ask questions like, why is this a heavy topic for you? I didn't know if it was just because it was social media and you wanted something controversial to talk about, because it's in the political atmosphere today, and or what the meaning is behind it for you, and maybe talk a little bit more about your personal feelings on those things if you wanted to. I mean,
Sure.
I definitely have my own personal feelings. So, um,
Yeah, I think
does all that make
it's
sense? I said a lot. Sorry.
yeah, no worries, no worries. That's great. I like that you're getting your thoughts out there. Yeah, it's like it is controversial, and I think part of me definitely is like, yeah, I want to talk about this because it's controversial, right? But it's like interesting. It's personally interesting to me. Like some people have these topics and they're super passionate about and super emotional about. Some people are super passionate about abortion, right? On both sides.
Mhm.
And some people
Mhm.
it's immigration. Some people it's religion. And I totally get that, you know. You're passionate about what you're passionate about. And for me it's not it's one of those things where it's like does it will it really matter to me ultimately in the end? Like will I be devastated um if like we continue on how we were like before Trump was in office and we went down that path, would I be devastated? No. Would I be devastated if things stay exactly the way they are like current day? No, not really. I wouldn't be devastated. But I do think that this topic is super interesting from like a psychological standpoint. Like it's definitely about how people think, how people feel, and I love that stuff. I really do love talking to people about how they think, how they feel. So that's definitely part of why it's so interesting. But there is one other factor, and it's like just as important as that first one, and it is what you had mentioned earlier. It is harm reduction. I think that if people are using unreliable, I guess you could say, like ways to determine other strategies for life in general, I think that you can be harmed, and I don't like to see people harmed. I like I
Mhm.
that's something that
Mhm.
I like to avoid.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I wanted to dig more into the harm reduction aspect. Like, um, where do you lie on what the statistics say? Have you read about like the statistics of the success rates of people who have things like gender dysphoria, or just non-gender normative feelings? And there's high rates of suicidality, and statistics I think generally say that gender affirming care has an overwhelming positive effect on suicidality. And so where do you stand in those things? Is that's what I
Sure.
mean? That's why I guess that's what I'm thinking when I think harm reduction is like, by the best of our measure, we should apply them if they seem to make sense, because they're helping people overwhelmingly. But knowing some people are gonna just be casualties, that's just a part of life. It's the point is to try to reduce those casualties. That's the harm reduction
Hmm.
approach from the way I see it. Um, maybe you could talk about that a little bit. I have tons of
Yeah,
questions. So yeah.
yeah, I'd love to. With regards to these statistics, is there one that stands out to you as the most impactful or the most important?
Well, overwhelmingly, I think it's the consensus that stands out the most, which says that gender affirming care has overwhelmingly positive effects.
Hmm. Okay.
There are, of course, in every industry, people who take advantage, people who do things for the wrong reasons, people are confused, of course, that just comes along with the territory. But yeah, that the most important takeaway to me is the consensus, what the data says. And the data is not like wishy-washy. It's pretty overwhelmingly positive. So, and anybody here who knows better, come up and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what I know, what I've read. And I always say, don't trust me. Like, go do the research yourself or listen to, better yet, I listen to people who are much smarter than me who focus on the topics. And, um, but yeah, so that's my question is what is the harm reduction aspect for you? Is it that maybe some people shouldn't it just, and I'm not trying to accuse, I'm just saying, is it that maybe some people shouldn't get some forms of gender affirming care like hormone replacement therapy because they don't feel like they're in the right body? Or what does that mean to you?
Sure. So when we're talking about gender affirming care, and when I talk about harm reduction, I'm talking about individuals under the age of 18. In my opinion, if you are over the age of 18, I kind of expect you to kind of have your stuff together. I expect a level of maturity. I know that's not always the case, but I think that is an expectation that you are an adult. You uh, should be mature enough to make your own life decisions and face consequences if you make a decision that is harmful. So examples would be permanent medical decisions, whether you're going to take certain drugs, have surgeries, have do recreational drugs, tattoos, all of that kind of stuff. So I kind of exclude adults from this harm area because I do expect them to be mature enough to figure this stuff out. But then on the
Mm.
other side of that, individuals under 18, children, I think that they may not have the maturity to make these types of decisions. And if they are able to make these types of decisions, that they can result in this harm. So I guess an example would be if a child, let's say age 13, 14, uh, maybe they told their primary care doctor or their parents or something, and they ended up going to like a gender clinic, a clinic or that is in that specialty field, and the provider were to say, okay, this is what you can do. You can take hormone suppressing medication. That'll stop your puberty. It will give you more time to figure out what we want to do. That is usually, I believe, that is usually what is said and how it is presented, probably with a little bit more information than I'm probably simplifying it a little bit, but I don't think that's too outrageous. And then they do go on these drugs. And if you are on these drugs for like one day, you're not going to have any ill effects. If you're on it for a week, probably not. A month, probably not. 3 months, probably not. When you start getting into 6 months, a year, 2 years, there can be negative health consequences for being on those drugs. And I guess that's a lot of where the harm reduction comes into play. Because we have these I would say they're the very young individuals. Don't have a ton of maturity. They don't have a ton of life experience. And it's like they come in and it's like, okay, well, let's just give them these drugs and kind of figure it out as we go. I would like there to be some more evidence before we start to administer drugs. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, okay, just to be frank, I'm not like using this as a mechanism to say I know better than anyone else, but I have a male to female trans sister. So I have some experiences in what it takes to go through these processes. And I can tell you it's rigorous. It can be a rigorous process to go through and trying for people going through it. So it's maybe is not as easy as you're making it out to be.
Okay.
And also, younger children don't make these decisions alone. They usually have guardians to some degree, parents, if they have parents, they have doctors who inform them. Now let me ask you a question. Would you rather them be informed properly of the long-term consequences and then make their choice given what the doctors recommend based on circumstances, what their parents or guardians can approve of and agree with them, and give them then the responsibility with all the proper information and education to help make their own choice about what to do? Does that make sense to you?
I think I hear what you're saying. So let me repeat back just so we're on the same page here. So you're
Mm.
asking, would I be comfortable with them making that decision as long as they were completely informed of all the potential negative life changing side effects? And if they were completely informed, they're able to know all the information about it, then would I be comfortable with them making that decision? Is that
I
accurate?
mean, I would caveat that with saying as best as we can. We
Okay.
can't know all the information of anything, and we
Sure.
know, by the way, almost all medications come with some sort of side effects,
Okay. The
short
best
term and long
information.
term potentially. So yeah, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
I think where I'm coming from, I would say no. The short answer is no. And here is kind of why I would say no. So we have these side effects which are negative. I think where I'm coming from is like I would want to know I would want to have a level of certainty that this treatment would be a long-term solution rather than just something like let's give it a shot and see what happens kind of situation. You shaking your head. Let's dig into
Yeah,
that.
I don't really agree. I don't agree with that framing that it's just a shot in the dark. I think there's a lot of evidence-based reasons why these things are available and what they provide. It's not just like tossing. Now, granted, there is always some level of that, right? Because just like with depression medications, you never know which ones are going to work for you. You have to go through the periods of time where they have to equalize in your system and then figure out whether they're going to affect you. I mean, almost all medications go through that. You don't have something that says, here, this is the absolute square peg that's going to fit in the square hole, to fix that problem. Also, it's usually not just one problem, it's a list of complicated problems. Um, so, yeah, I think maybe there's some oversimplification
Okay.
there of the
Uh,
processes and how things are done today. So,
Maybe I can try framing it in a different way. And excuse me because I'm not very good at explaining this. It's things
no
that are
worries.
very abstract. So it's difficult. I wish Today David was here. I like the way that he kind of frames this. He frames it very eloquently.
Bring it
So
on. No, I'm just kidding.
okay. He's not here. Um
Yeah,
so we
cool.
got
I know.
like society here, right? And we have like societal expectations of what it means to be male, what it means to be female, right?
Mhm.
And then over here we have the individual internal experience. And I think a lot of the times people trans people will point to this internal whatever internal this is, this internal experience, right? And say I I might have a penis, but I feel female, or the right vice versa. And I'm thinking about this like internal uh, space thing. Okay, there is a really annoying beeping noise. I need to try to turn that off real quick because I just
All right.
don't like that. It's gonna just
So a lot of
throw me
questions
completely
are,
off.
if you don't mind me take this interlude, this interjection here. A lot of questions popping up in my head. Like in your video, the trans person who was talking, what did you get from them? Like, what did you extrapolate from the things that they were saying? Well, I won't even say what I took from it. You maybe give me your thoughts first of what you got from what they were saying.
Sure. So, I mean, there's two individuals, but I think I'll concentrate on the first individual that I was speaking with, just because
Yeah,
I talked
I
to them
think
the
they were a
most. Yeah.
self-admitted trans individual, right?
Um.
Right?
Yes. Yes. The
I
first
think.
one.
Yeah,
The second person who
yeah,
came up was not, and then the third person
right.
was also yes.
Yeah, so I was referring to the first person that
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. She was. She shared a lot, and she said from a young age she knew she was female. Um, her parents, they at one point attempted to put her in some sort of religious program that was like a make her male again, basically. I showed extreme empathy for that, because
Conversion
that
therapy,
was
yeah, whatever.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
horrible. Yeah, conversion therapy. I don't like the thought of that. I don't think that would be effective anyway. And when she turned 18, she was able to go to college. She was able to go to the doctor on her own, so her parents had no impact on any medical decisions at that point. And yeah, it's she described it as she she had described it as this internal experience and some external. I wish I would have been able to dig deeper into that and what
Mhm.
exactly was going on there. It did. That kind of takes me to this point, where I was trying to talk about before.
Right. Well, let me elaborate a little bit more, like because I think you're missing a piece. Well, maybe
Okay,
a big piece.
maybe.
And I think the big piece is that they said they're happy now. She said they're happy now, and the HRT that they're taking is working and making them feel good, and they feel productive, and I think that was kind of the sentiment I took away from it was this was not a bad experience for them.
Yes, and I would agree with you on that.
So yeah, yeah.
Why
So
do
and this is I think this is part of the issue is like yeah, never mind. You go with what you were going to say. I'm not sure I
okay,
can frame my thought there. Um,
no problem. So I would agree with you that yes, happiness was a result. With that being said, I don't know if that is short term or long term, right? Right now, there's that happiness, and I'm glad that there's that happiness. That is terrific. If we were to check in, let's say 20 years from now, if that happiness will remain, I don't know. I know that
we have statistics related to that.
from 20 years,
I've long-term statistics of people who are happy in their choices. Sure, we have other statistics that say some people are not. Again, this is the overwhelming consensus is these choices, from what I understand. I wish people who knew better, had better statistics than me at reference could come up and speak to them. But from what I understand, the overt message is supportive, affirmative behaviors for people who find themselves in these situations are generally good statistically, like have good outcomes, like less suicidality, less depression, whatever else you want to extrapolate from that, functional in society, whatever the hell that means. Um, I've come to have whole definitions of that, but anyways, I don't want to go off on a tangent. I can easily do that. Um, so yeah, I guess I'm wondering why. Let me ask you a question. Do you have personal experiences with people beyond what you've experienced from your channel and your sort of social media outlets? Do you have experiences with people who go through things like gender affirming care or hormone replacement therapies, or, you know, is there a personal experience in your life related to that that you kind of, or is it merely just you see things and yeah, I don't know what reasons you'd wrap around your head to say this is bad without looking at the data that says that these things are actually proven to be pretty good and pretty effective. There's always casualties. That's a sad part of life. You're never going to mitigate all the casualties. And actually, the statistics would say when you remove things like gender affirming care, things get worse. So call me out. Someone come up here and statistically call me out on this, because this is just what I read, what I understand, and I can be wrong.
From what I've
Again,
seen,
don't trust
we the longest out that I've seen for good high quality data is about 10 years. After that,
me.
I haven't seen any data that would be uh, high quality in the sense of a large sample size.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. I'd be interested to know, we can't wander down all the sources and studies and
Yeah,
all the things. That's something that I don't think is a productive thing to do in this format here necessarily. I'm speaking about what I read as far as consensus is concerned. How far that data goes back, I could probably run to ChatGPT real quick and ask a quick question and say, what's the longest backdated historical evidence that we have of positive effect of some form of gender affirming care, whatever the hell that is, because it could probably go way back. I think what women's studies transferred into like gender identity studies and all those from feminism, something like that, all translated into what we know today. So, and it's been going on since like mid 20th century. Um, so I have to imagine people aren't just pulling numbers out of their ass and saying, here, this is good. We tested 5 people, and that's, how deep have you dived, or how many conversations have you had with people? All right, here's a good point, I think, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way. I've seen you've had one guy on here. I don't remember his what he was. He was an author of sorts, but he did.
mm-hmm.
Was it on what is that term?
Autogynephilia.
Guy Autogynephilia.
Mm-hmm.
And you've had Mia Hughes on here as well, who's pretty notoriously anti-trans, kind of, maybe not, I don't know, call it anti, call it what you will. I don't want to be overly charged in my terminology. I think she's got a lot of misinformation.
I don't think she'd be
I
upset
think
at that term.
yeah, I think I think she has a lot of misinformation. Like, how many people have you talked to in the field that are, on the positive side of treatment and these things and understandings in the field? That would be my thing. That would level the playing field. At least it would look a little unbiased. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yeah. So
To say
you're
that this is somehow just default bad. Um,
yeah. So it wouldn't be a lack of me reaching out to people like I guess experts, you could say. I
mhm.
I reached out to quite a few people, and I mean, um Mia obviously responded to me, but she was on
Yeah,
the opposite
let
side.
me clarify. Let me clarify. I don't necessarily just mean on your social media. I mean in your
Okay.
research and what you
Hmm.
understand about the field. Who do you follow? Who do you read? What books
Huh.
have you read on the positive side and the positive effects of these things? What studies
Aaron
have you gone after and dug through to critically analyze to say this is an invalid study or it's crap or whatever? How much have you done of that? So,
Aaron in the morning is a really interesting person to follow. They have like their whole thing is trying to push out information about transgender issues, and they're an advocate, and it's like like I looked into everything that this person's putting out, and yeah, I when I look at it, I always try to keep an open mind, and none of it really. I always find some sort of something that's not quite correct that I can follow and say, yes, this is absolutely perfectly logical from beginning to end.
Mm.
They're making a really
Do
good
you have
point
any
here. It
examples
doesn't.
of that? It would be really cool to go through one example as in because I'd like to
Oh,
see some of these things.
I mean,
Um,
not
maybe just
offhand. No.
one narrow, yeah, I guess one narrow example because um, yeah, I don't know. We could go a million places with this, like studies in psychology of identity, not even just gender identity, but identity itself.
Okay.
Like, you know, is there a notion of identity to you? Does a person have a
Hmm.
notion of identity?
Yes, I think
All right.
that one's identity is almost entirely influenced by external factors.
Hmm. Interesting. I think, yeah, I kind of stand in the realm of like it's indivisible, separating the nature and the nurture there. There's no way to know how to draw that line.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought. It looked like Veronica
Okay.
wanted to come up and say something.
Yeah,
I
I
need
mean,
to,
we
yeah,
can.
maybe we need a little bit fresh blood in here, vibe things up. I don't know if they still
I'll
want to come
invite
up.
her. We'll see if she comes up. She had her hand up.
Yeah, yeah.
See if she. Oh, I think she declined it.
Nope, guess not.
Yeah, that's okay. No
All right.
worries.
So, yeah. So then if people have identity, then it's not a far stretch to think that people have this notion of gender identity. Some piece of them associates with whatever their body expresses from a, um, and look, we have notions where we have physical brain features, and you may know this, but we have physical brain features that are heavily, sexualized in a very obvious fashion. And very often in these cases where people say, for instance, have gender dysphoria or non-gendered normative feelings, their brain structures often align with the way that they feel. And I'm not trying to assign causation there. I don't think we have the information to say what caused what. Did the brain cause the event, or did the event cause the brain? My guess is probably some combination of the two. Um, but it's it's not a biological determinism thing to come out and say because you have this external set of features you should feel this way. That's an obvious misjudgment. We know this via psychology, via primatology, which is a pretty long stemmed field and has a lot of research and details about human behavior and a lot of insights to human behavior. So it's not just gender studies, like these things we see across these same behaviors we see across multiple species, many species, and for good biological reasons, like evolutionary success reasons, right? Like humans evolved to have about such 50% of their society being reproductive, and the rest is kind of there for biological support, right? They don't need to be productive because they can be the aunt or this is how Robert Sapolsky frames it. They can be the aunt or the uncle and help care for the children and help care for other people. They don't need to be reproductive because we have enough reproductive people, right? And in that, many creatures, many biological animals, whatever, express these same, sexual behaviors. So, yeah, so I don't understand where it's a problem for someone to be quote unquote non-normative, and why to lean on the side of like gender affirming care seems to be by default harmful versus what the statistics say. It seems like you're taking the default stance of it's harmful, but past a certain age they can make their own choices, right?
Yeah, it's more of
Not,
a
discounting such things like, okay, we have to dig a little deeper here because, a child can have gender dysphoria, I think, from the ages of noted 3, 4, 5, something like that. And then when their body starts to develop in puberty, it causes, generally statistically, gender dysphoria to get worse if they're going the wrong direction that they want their biology to, that they align with, that they identify with. So they apply puberty blockers so they don't make permanent pubescent changes to their body to increase their gender dysphoria, which then increases statistics like suicidality, depression, yada, 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 antisocial behaviors. Does all that make sense? Is that a lot? I'm sorry, I talked a lot.
yeah. There was a lot there. I think I
We can
understood
walk through it.
some of
Yeah.
it. Yeah. One of the first things you said was, I think you were trying to steelman me, and I think you said like, I think that there's a problem with people being non-normative. And
No,
no,
that's
okay,
not really what I was trying to say. I
okay.
apologize. I was just trying to say that you seem to be defaulting on the side that gender affirming care is harmful
Hmm,
and then moving towards autonomy from harmful.
hmm.
So previous to this mark of autonomy, anything prior to that should be heavily dissected in cases and used and variable. Maybe, I don't know, do you think it's okay for a child who hasn't gone through puberty yet to take puberty blocking drugs to block their pubescent development? Do you think that's okay?
I think we would want to like know for absolute, not maybe not absolute certain, but with a high degree of certainty that there is a good reason to do so. And I think at this moment,
Oh, I get you. Okay.
don't think we necessarily have met that
Hmm.
standard.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So
let me.
most of what I know about puberty blocking drugs is that they are mostly reversible. Like even if you take them for a few years, puberty will continue after you stop taking them. And then they can also apply counteractive drugs to help further puberty on, yada, yada, yada. Yes, they have their side effects. All drugs pretty much have their side effects. They should be informed of those side effects, right? That's kind of the job of the doctors to make sure you know the risks. And if you're young, if you're incapable of making your own decisions with full autonomy, generally your doctors and your guardians help you through those processes, right? So yeah, I think it's a combination of oversimplification of the process and lying on the side of kids don't know themselves enough. So unless we can prove with some sort of absolution that they need this thing, that they shouldn't have it.
Uh,
When that's not what I understand the statistics to back up.
let's
So
actually
that's, I
get
guess, where I
into
get
that.
lost.
I would want to know. Actually, let's start really basic. Um, so we got sex and we have gender.
Mhm.
Can we talk about what both of those mean?
Sure.
Okay. I guess what, first starting off, what is sex?
To me, sex is what's the word I'm looking for? A very narrow lensed biological alignment of sexuality in a creature,
Okay.
right?
So, basically, whether or not they genetically would have the ability to reproduce via sperm or via
Reproduction.
an
Yes.
egg. Okay, gotcha.
Reproduction is important, but I don't think reproduction is the only thing.
Okay.
Um,
But it is a physical
but yeah,
characteristic.
obviously it is absolutely yes.
Okay, gotcha. All right, now moving on to gender. What is gender?
So hold on, Veronica's asking a question here. Here's where I would make a distinction that not all of our species are reproductive. That doesn't make them not male or not female. necessarily, right?
So if a male, if a if a baby had its testicles removed for some whatever reason, then they wouldn't necessarily become a different sex. They would still remain the sex that they are. They just would not have that part or ability to reproduce. That's kind of what you're saying?
Right. Well,
Okay.
yeah, I guess I'm focusing on what Veronica's saying here to try and answer the questions. But sex is a combination of traits. It's not just a single thing. I have a penis. I'm not saying me. I'm just saying hypothetically, I have a penis. I'm a boy. I can reproduce. Not everyone who has a penis can reproduce. We have infertile people who are maybe genetically, inherently, naturally infertile to environmentally infertile for whatever reasons. Maybe a horrible carpentry accident. Who knows? Um, it's just like they say most nine-fingered people are carpenters or something like that. Um,
Probably not wrong.
so I'm just saying that reproduction is not the only thing that defines male or female. If it is, and are you talking about success of reproduction, or just the fact that we are a reproductive species, or where's your designation there? Yes, chromosomes, Jan, have many more than two options, even many more than the ones you're outlining there. It's much more complicated than most people make it out to be. So that was my only
Okay.
point is when you're talking about sex, a lot of people will say male, female, you got a penis, you're a man, you got a vagina, you're a woman. It's like it's just not that simple. Um,
Okay. But we are,
there.
I think we kind of narrowed it down to being something physical uh, with the body.
It's just my gaffing, Veronica. I like to gaff. I'm a jovial person sometimes, usually to dig myself out of deep depression. So
Okay. Shall we move on to defining gender now?
sure.
All right. What you got?
Defending gender, is that what you said? Or defining it?
Defining definition.
Defining it. Okay. So gender to me is also a multi-characteristic, complicated thing. It's not something that we have a hard line that says this is what qualifies as this gender for this person. Just like anything cognitive, anything metacognitive, it's never a hard line of this is the thing. It's always like it's these combination of factors and orders of magnitude of these traits. Is someone masculine or feminine? Maybe you're a male, but you're a feminine male or an effeminate male. But maybe you still like females and you still want to reproduce and have children. I mean, it's such a complicated thing. I've always said that you can't, sexuality, and gender, you can't divide them. They're all complexly intertwined, in my opinion.
Can you repeat that last part? What's intertwined?
Sex, sexuality, and gender. And your identity hovers in that area. If you want to look at it like with the Venn diagrams, your identity is kind of wrapped around that whole thing and is a piece and a portion of each one of those things. Your gender identity would hover more in the area of gender, influenced by your sex and your sexuality. Your sexuality is influenced by your gender and your sex. It's all very complexly intertwined. It's not something you can divide. But I think statistically, most people identify as either man or woman. And then you break down from there. But I'm not 100% certain of that, but I'm pretty sure like most of like, I don't know. When I say most, and I'm not talking 75%, I'm talking like 40, 50, 30, I don't know, somewhere around there. Identify as man or woman, male, female, whatever it is.
Okay. I don't. I am struggling to understand exactly what you mean. I'm gonna repeat back what I do understand, and then hopefully you can fill in whatever I'm missing here. So I think what you're saying is it's not necessarily physical, and it's more of cognitive, so meaning in the brain. Am I right so far? Okay.
No, it's a combination of physical and cognitive.
Okay.
I don't think you can divide
Hmm.
those things. I don't think there's an easy way for you to draw a line between what's physical and what's. And as a matter of fact, if you really want to get technical and philosophical, I'm a physicalist. I'm a determinist. So you
Okay.
absolutely can't separate the physical from anything. It was interesting. I was watching a show recently about someone talking about the study of how to define the magnitude of difference of something when it makes it different from something else. Like what is the statistical magnitude of difference that something has to display from something else to be counted as different? It's a really interesting study. Um, but that's kind of how I view things, is there's no separating those things. And yes, I mean sexual, like sexuality or sexual orientation. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So it's something physical in the brain, and you haven't stated this, but I'm kind of being presumptuous and assuming that this leads to some sort of like an identity of being um, some sort of gender, some gender related, and it's kind of like if it's in the brain, it's like a feeling, something you feel, something that you experience that gets you there. Okay.
Sure. I mean, we experience everything through our senses, right?
Yeah.
We can't really avoid that. That's the the solipsist view. We can never get around the fact that even if we're learning something collectively about outside of us, external of us, we still have to interpret it through our own senses and through our own metacognition, right? So
Okay.
certainly it's got something to do with all the juice and bugs and stuff up there, you know?
Okay.
It's probably, in my opinion, it's everything. There's no separating. I think most people have a concept of identity, right? Most people have a concept of self, of me, of and that's usually expressed in language form, right? I'm going here. I'm going there. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. This is what identity. It's self-recognition. It's like I am a thing that exists. It's object permanence. It's all that stuff, right? It's not one simple thing. And then when you have identity, you obviously have pieces and parts of the rest of you that makes what your identity is. So yeah, you can characterize something as a gender identity if you feel different from a normative gender, which I agree is cultural, right?
Okay.
Those are all, I think, cultural phenomenon. Um,
Huh.
how someone feels isn't necessarily cultural. It may be influenced by the cultural understandings.
Okay.
Um, does that make sense?
Maybe I think I'm grasping a little bit more. I'm building this up piece by piece here. So we got
Yeah,
something
yeah,
physical in the
yeah.
brain,
Hmm.
and that helps build the identity, including the gender. And it,
Well, may I
no,
ask a simple question?
yeah, absolutely.
I just like, what do we know that isn't physical in the brain? Do we have any evidence of anything that isn't physical in the brain?
That is true. That is very true. I don't think there is anything non-physical. I mean, if you want to call electrical impulses non-physical, but I would say they are physical.
Physical.
Yeah.
That's physical. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't know of anything non-physical. There's no evidence of anything non-physical.
Okay. Okay.
Everything we know of has been categorized as physical. Everything
Yeah.
that
I
we have
mean,
consistent understanding of. Um,
okay.
testable, repeatable scenarios, not like ghosts, because nobody can catch one on camera and verify and say, hello, what's your name? And, how do we know you're a ghost? And, and all those things.
Okay. Okay. So we
Yes, I
got,
think thoughts are physical. If our substrate is physical, how can it be anything other than physical?
I can't argue with that. I'm on board with you there. I know you're responding to Veronica there. Okay. So we got brain chemistry. Is it okay if I use that term, brain chemistry?
Sure, it
You
makes
know what
sense.
that means?
It
Okay,
is
cool.
chemical,
So we got brain
but
chemistry, and then we have obviously there's external things going on with our senses, culture, and then got that chemistry. It will cultivate our identity, our gender identity, okay, and then we are motivated to take action because of that brain soup chemistry that's going on. And I guess that's the part where there might be a disconnect, because I think I'm agreeing with you on all of the previous. I think we're disagreeing on the strategy. So I think if your sex does not match the usual gender identity that's associated with that sex, gender affirming care might. I know you're not saying it always.
Right.
It might be a strategy to, I guess, help with make that brain chemistry a better brain chemistry, I guess you could say.
Yeah, but look, I think that's an oversimplification in itself too. I don't think any
Okay.
doctor is saying let's fix your brain chemistry. You know, the I mean, maybe from a metaphorical standpoint, but your brain chemistry is constantly changing. So, can we have some influences based on drug effects and things like that? Yeah. Um, Mostly, I'd say in those realms, we're mitigating symptoms of diagnoses like gender dysphoria, like the feeling of not being. Now, yeah, that's interesting because I came to light in some things in my own experiences, like, for instance, wearing a suit and tie. I always felt when I was wearing a suit and tie, I was wearing someone else's skin, and I always felt uncomfortable, but I never really knew why until I explored it and figured out. And it was kind of enlightening for me to understand how someone would feel. I know that's oversimplification, but how someone would feel if they were in what they felt was the wrong body and stuck there and can do nothing about it. Can people be mistaken about those things? Yeah, sure, it does happen. Um, why the suit? Complicated psychological reasons, but it's just not me. That's just it. It's just not me. And I had to do it because of my circumstances. I worked in places where I had to wear a suit. I didn't like it. Just like in society, people have to wear skin that they're not comfortable with just to fit in because other people are uncomfortable with them being different or different than they expect, different what they expect the norms to be.
I got a
Um,
really good question for you, I think. Like you're talking about expectations of people, like other people feeling uncomfortable. Why not just say welcome?
well, I do.
Okay,
And that's
good.
when and I think that's what trans and non-gender normative people do as well eventually. Hopefully they come around to that point of, well, fuck what everybody else thinks about me. I'm going to do what I need to do. And they are making their autonomous choice, to go back to autonomy, which we were talking about. That's a big thing for me, is like that's above and beyond everything else. I think people should be given as much autonomy as possible, of course, understanding that we have what I call stewardship period in our lives. You're not going to let a child walk off a cliff and learn that lesson. You're
Yeah.
going to probably forcefully intervene. Um, so that's a gradual thing with kids to understand when they're starting to be. I'm super proud of my kids to be able that they've been so smart. They can make their own autonomous choices from very young ages. Is that everybody? No, not necessarily. I don't know what the circumstances are there, but um, I think I wandered. I'm sorry.
That's
Again, I'm
okay.
not having a great day today. I'm not having a great day today. I'm trying to hold it together. If anybody else wants to come up here and talk too, please do.
Okay. I would like to. I'm probably going to repeat myself quite a bit, but I just want
Yeah,
to
no,
have
sure.
this path. So
That's
we
fair. That's
have,
fair.
let's say we have someone who is male, their sex is male, and their gender identity, they're identifying as female. They are, I don't know, 12 years old or something, and they are uncomfortable with that gender identity. Right?
Hmm.
So there's, I guess, what are all the strategies for that circumstance, and how do we figure out which one is the best?
Well, all right. If you want to get technical, most people who experience these circumstances today grow up in households that don't handle these circumstances well. And that's usually the start of more downslide into depression and suicidality and feeling ostracized and rejected and not loved by people because they're different. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, that's where it starts. So that's the unfortunate side of it. So then the psychological help work going forward is usually starting by digging them out of those things and saying all these judgments that people made of you are unfair. They're when you look at it from the best evidence we have, there's no reason for someone to judge you because you feel like you're not in the right body. And you want to make an autonomous choice to change that to feel better about yourself. And again, I think the statistics say that this is overwhelmingly successful.
So I don't want to oversimplify your answer, but I think
Okay.
what you're saying is that in many cases, not all cases, you're not saying that gender affirming care, changing your body physically, is often the best strategy.
Well, look, I agree with you that things need to be done carefully. I'm not
Yeah.
rejecting that notion.
Yep.
That's
And I
not a
know.
notion that I'm trying. Yeah, I think anything medical should have, if we can, the best oversight possible with the best information regarding your risks and rewards in any circumstance.
Yeah.
Um,
And I wasn't trying
so
to
I'm
paint
not
it
trying to
super black
minimize.
and white.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not trying to minimize that either. It did, and the thing is, I think it exists. I think we could always be better, but I think we have a pretty rigorous system that has a lot of maybe sometimes considered barriers to a lot of people that it's not fast enough. And I have some personal experience with that. My sister, it just wasn't going. The process wasn't going fast enough for her. She was miserable. But we don't need to go into a whole lot of detail about that. But just as a personal anecdote, that um, you know, rigor is not to be sacrificed, but there's also a balance there of some that how tenuous a person's life is. Are they suicidal? Worse, are they homicidal? Have they turned their aggression to other people because they feel ostracized or angry, or heaven forbid there's some public figure that's talking about anti-trans notions and you know it hits home with someone who's going through those generally poor experiences, and heaven forbid something horrible happens. You know,
Let's just let's
that's personally,
just
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
let's say that this is the very best strategy would be gender affirming care, or most of the time. I want to paint it super black and white. I know you're not saying that, but hypothetically, let's say that is absolutely the best strategy. What is the second best strategy?
Mm. I don't know if there is one. It's usually a combination of things, right? You just want good medical support. You want good psychological therapy. You want good psychological support. You want good medical support from your medical doctors, your specialists. It's always a combination of all those complex things. And I don't think that that's
Mhm.
not what it is. I think the overt thing is not people seeking gender affirming care as the first medical thing they've ever done in their life, you
Mhm.
know, for their own health, if you will. You know what I mean? So gender affirming care is yet another step of, hey, we have statistically, we know that there are people who are kind of gender non-conforming for whatever degree. Some of them might need hormone therapy. Some of them might just need psychotherapy. So I don't know if there's a second answer there. I think it's a combination of things to work through a complex process. And honestly, I think the public should stay out of it as much as possible. It should be between parents, guardians themselves, their doctors. It should not be a politicized thing, in my opinion. I mean, I have some pretty radical views around gender affirming care. We should destigmatize it, and it should just be care. It should be part of medical care for people. But I also don't want people who get gender affirming care, who benefit by it, to lose that ability, because we've gotten ourselves in a hole and we need some counteracting feature to make these people's lives better and help them in a humanitarian way. Does that make sense? Did I make sense there, or did I wander again?
You did wander a little bit. It's okay. I'm gonna bring you back here. I want to try to stay focused
Good.
on
I appreciate that, man.
yeah.
I love you.
Yeah, no worries, man. So we have what for the sake of this conversation, we're saying gender affirming care is the best strategy. You described the second best strategy which would be like the total medical package. So you got supportive care. We have psychological care. Maybe you're implying like therapy and psychotherapy, stuff like that. Um, you described that as the second best option, and
Actually, I didn't. I said there is no second best option.
you said there is none,
I said,
and then you
I said
described some
that's
other
all.
stuff.
Yeah, that whole right, but that whole thing is the package. It's not a
Yeah,
second best option. What we
I
should be
gotcha.
doing is offering medical services that are unbiased for what we know statistically, data wise, to be the best thing to treat whatever the problem is, by the best of our knowledge. That should be what medicine is. Medicine shouldn't be like, because here's part of the hypocrisy, right? Part of gender affirming care is hormone replacement therapy. It's well beyond just that. It's many other things, but that's one piece of it that people have a problem with it. But yet we have hims and hers, which is basically cis gender affirming care, and it gets there are commercials for it, like, and there's not a lot of public dissent over people getting cisgender affirming care. And here I get terminology gets blended a little bit, and again, I don't want to diminish people who benefit by gender affirming care, but I do believe it's a stigmatized thing that needs to be destigmatized, because people do the same things, just cis normative versus non normative. And why is that not called into question? Because that's hypocritical. That's like, we can do this because it aligns with some standard that we understand as normal.
If this is
Does that make sense?
important, yeah, I think so. I think so. If this cisgender affirming care is important, I'd like to come back to it if it is important to you. But I do want to go back to the whole package for a moment here.
Mm.
This whole package, this whole medical care package, gender affirming care, and all the other things that you described, is that currently what we're doing, or are we doing something else?
I mean, I think we have all those services. I think they exist.
Mm-hmm.
I think many people know they exist. I think many people utilize them. I think many people don't have the level of quality that, or even some services in some areas, and a lot of that is because of, I think, political reasons. Um, you know,
Let me be a little bit more specific here. Do you
okay.
think transgender people who seek and receive gender affirming care also receive other therapies like psychotherapy and stuff like that? Okay, that's often the case.
I'm pretty sure that's part of the process. Like,
Gotcha. Okay.
generally, you have to go through some sort of psychoanalysis to even qualify for
Yeah.
some features of gender affirming care, I believe.
Okay.
Again, not a specialist in the area, but these are just things I understand. Um,
Okay.
KC
So
wants to come up. Do you mind if they come up and ask questions?
sure. Let's bring them up in just one moment. I want to kind of finish
Yeah.
this
All
thought
right,
here.
cool. Sure.
So we have this whole package that is typically used, maybe not all the time, which includes gender affirming care, but also includes other supplements. I guess you could say supplemental care. And we have these statistics that say, you know, people who seek gender affirming care typically have better results, especially in the short term. How would we know if it was the gender affirming care itself, or if it was part of the supplemental care?
Well, again, I think you're dividing those things, and I don't think they're divisible. I mean,
Can
I
someone
don't
have?
understand what you mean. What would an example of your understanding of a supplemental care? Just psychiatric care, not medicinal,
Yeah,
maybe?
it might be CBT therapy. That might be an example.
Right. And I'd say that that is a thing. Like, again,
Hmm.
I think to get most gender affirming care, you first have to go through some psychological evaluation, be determined if you're maybe gender dysphoric or have some other, non-gender conforming or whatever behaviors. Um, and we have statistical analysis that says this is kind of the best way we understand to treat these circumstances. Um, that's what specialists are for. We have specialists for these exact reasons. Um, yeah, I don't know what to say. I don't see it as a primary and a secondary care. Like that there's some negotiation there. If we have, again, we have the available sciences, and other people make other choices with their bodies, even at very young ages sometimes. Tattoos, piercings, whatever body modifications that they feel like doing to themselves. And we really don't generally have a problem with it. It generally becomes a problem when it's gender non-conforming. That's where I see the division.
Okay. Let me.
Surgery, like plastic surgery, is a huge industry, and it's mostly cis. I think, from what I understand. Some places yes, some places no. For tattoos, you can get them at early ages with parental consent sometimes.
Okay.
You can also go out of country if you want to get it. If your parents want to let you to have a tattoo, you can go out of the country if you want. Other countries have it. Um, but
So
yeah, a better example is like plastic surgery, I would say, where we have it's a majority cis industry, I believe.
for
Um,
tattoos.
no, no, plastic surgery for people,
Oh,
you
okay.
know.
Okay.
I mean, all right, let's take a hypothetical. Let's say a child is horribly disfigured at a young age. Is plastic surgery an okay option because they're not happy with their body after that occurrence?
Hmm. Maybe. I think it depends.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
think it
I
would
think you could say
probably
it
be
depends on
best to
everything.
wait. I think it probably would be
Yeah.
best to wait if possible. If there's going to be, if it, if their appearance will be, um, I feel like it's not possible to wait. Like their appearance will get worse if you wait. Then I'd say you probably would want to do it right away. That would be what I would look at.
Mm. But yeah, I
Um,
guess here's my problem again. Like, do you think this isn't happening in the medical community? Do you think it's really as easy as walking in the door and saying, I want gender affirming care? Give it to me?
Not exactly. I do think that it's in some states, probably not all states, that it is relatively simple to get hormone suppressing drugs. I think that's something that's relatively easy, depending on where you live.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I'd have to question what easy means.
I'm thinking 3 half-hour visits and at a gender
I
clinic.
don't know the statistics there. Casey wanted to share some statistics. I wanted to, or some research. I was curious because
Sure.
I speak what I read and I speak on consensus I understand. I don't have the details. I don't have the memory capacity for that. And I'm not fastidious enough to keep up my research and slap it out here for you
No
right now, the
problem.
things that I've been through.
Yeah,
Um,
let's bring up Casey in just one moment. I want to try to go at this another time. We'll give it one more try here, and I don't. I'm struggling with words right now for a sec here, but let me try
sure,
to gather
sure,
my
sure.
thoughts here. Okay,
I'm sorry, I can
so
wander a bit too. My apologies. So yeah.
a little bit. That's okay. We wandered for a little bit, but it was a nice walk, and now we're back, so it's all good. So we have this data, and the data is representing that gender affirming care has positive outcomes. So when I'd like to keep using the example of a child, although this probably would apply to more than just a child. So we have this child who goes in to receive gender affirming care, but as a part of their medical regimen, they will also receive CBT therapy, let's just say, and maybe some other types of psychotherapy, counseling, support, lots of stuff with that whole package. And this is the same case with all the other kids who also go through the same process. And then we have the data at the end, and the data says that this whole package.
Hang on 1 second. Sorry.
You're getting too hot. That's understandable.
Yeah, it's getting hot as fuck in
Okay.
here. Sorry.
Okay. So we got all these different individuals going in for this care. They're getting the gender affirming care, but they're also getting the whole package. They're getting the ultimate deal on the car wash, you know. And then the data says, oh, they're doing really good. They're doing awesome now. 1, 2 years, whatever after. And I guess I would be like, what would happen if we removed the gender affirming care aspect from it, but removed or kept all the other stuff in that package? What would occur at that point? And
Well, again, I think that would be equated to removing services related to gender affirming care. That would be equal to removing care. And we know already statistically what happens when we remove this care. Things like depression, suicidality, antisocial personality behaviors, things like that get worse because people are not generally getting the care that they need.
is it that they don't receive any care?
Some people, sure, but maybe it's if they're not getting gender affirming care, they're not getting the care they need. If they're not getting full care of, like, for instance, like we talked about earlier, puberty blocking drugs, right? They already have gender dysphoria at a young age. Their pubescent changes of their body are making their gender dysphoria worse, which generally has a statistical correlation with higher levels of suicidality. And, we're talking about this from a statistics standpoint. This is a negotiation with their care and support team, like their psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, whatever, to say, here's how I feel. I want to kill myself. Or whatever whatever it is. And I think the general intent is to try and reduce the pressures that cause those things. And if pubescent changes in your body are going to make that worse, statistically, we can back that up with saying it makes gender dysphoria worse. Does that make sense?
I think I may have lost you on the how we know the causation, how the statistics directly relate to that.
Well, it's not really causation. It's like, here's what the statistics say. And, with our best judgment, this type of treatment usually has success. Is it always going to be successful? Is it going to have varying degrees of success? Yeah. But generally, it reduces things like suicidality, depression, da 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 da. Statistically, I'm not trying to assign causality. I'm trying to say this is what the data says.
Hmm. With this, okay, I think I'm picking up what you're putting down, and I have the question that I'd like to ask now. So we have the data that says if you do this gender affirming care, then suicidality drops. What what is it being compared to? What's the baseline?
What's the baseline? Someone who's
Yes,
not suicidal or people who aren't suicidal? I mean, there are people who go through, who have gender nonconforming behaviors, ideology, whatever you want to call it, those combination of things that are not suicidal.
I think you might have
So they don't
misunderstood.
need. Okay, I apologize. Go ahead.
It's
Try
okay.
again.
It's okay. Yeah, let me try again. So we got this data that it's saying that this is helpful, and it's saying, hey, we're recording this information. The people who take this have a suicidal rate of 0.05 or something. Okay, write that down. Like, if we have these trans individuals who are going in and they don't get gender affirming care, do they get marked down and they're like, okay, now this group has 7% suicidality? Like, what's being compared here?
I think the way it works, generally, the way statistics are analyzed here are it isolates the group of gender nonconforming individuals. It isolates the group of gender nonconforming individuals who have depression and suicidality. And you kind of get smaller and smaller groups, right?
Okay.
So you end up with like people who are suicidal, for instance. Statistically, we can do these things to make their chances of not killing themselves better because it's a solvable problem. It's, well, for some people, not for everyone. There are no like, here's your, again, it's not the square peg in the square hole situation. It's always a complex thing. Um, uh, Actually, and Veronica, yeah, I'd say honestly that's an interesting topic for me. Um, Autonomy of choice, I think, does go to what I would call death with dignity or euthanasia or whatever you want to call it. But if people can say, "Hey, I'm depressed because people don't accept me for what I want to be, not what they see," and that's causing me that's a solvable problem because we know people don't have real good justifiable reason to make them feel that way. This is called abuse. This is psychological abuse to someone to say you're not allowed to feel the way you do.
I'm reeling you in. Reeling you in.
All right.
Okay. So let's talk more
I
about the
sidebar.
how this data is derived here.
Okay.
So you said it's like smaller and smaller groups. To say that this group has a lower suicidality rate than this other group. What is the other group?
People who aren't suicidal, who don't have suicidal ideation, who have some of the other characteristics, like I said, of non-gender conforming.
Okay. Did they receive gender affirming care, or I'm not picking up what you're putting down here.
Well, all right. Again, this is complicated. As I said earlier, I think gender affirming care is kind of an uncomfortable notion. It's unnecessary. People should just get care. If
Okay.
they're psychological, but we know we have the minority oppressed, repressed people because they behave differently than the normative understanding, and people want to judge them by it. Right? We know this exists, biases in these natures, right?
Okay.
Those have psychological impacts. Um, you know, it's no different from anyone feeling different in any other group and being ostracized for it. It has psychological ramifications. Some of those things are depression, suicidality, antisocial behaviors, da da da. I know I sound repetitive here, but
Okay. I'm.
does that make
Uh,
sense?
I think what you said makes sense. I don't think. I think it sidestepped what I asked. I'm gonna try again here. I'm gonna try again.
Interesting. All right, all right.
So, we got there's a few different ways you can like determine something statistically, especially in the medical field. So you can give a bunch of people come in and they have a medical condition, and you can give them all the same drug, and then before you give them the drug, you can say, "Hey, how are you feeling on a scale from 1 to 10?" And they might say, I have a scale of I'm in pain up to 8, and some people say 7, and then 9 and 10. And then you give them the drug, and
Mhm.
then a week later, you might bring them in again, and they might be like, you might ask, "Okay, what's your pain now?" And someone might say 5, 4, 3, 2. And it's like, "Oh, hey, that reduced the pain by whatever percent, or it's effective because right, you had it before and you had it after." And with those
Mhm.
situations, often you would want to have a control. So with those same group of people, half of them you just give a sugar pill or something. You know, tell them you're treating them,
Placebo.
or I mean, tell them that you're part of a study. Obviously, you be ethical about it, but you don't say who's getting the treatment, right? And then if the people who have the sugar pill also have the same amount of reduction in their pain, then you know that it was just placebo and it might not have actually done any good. But if you get all the people who took the pill, they're like 1, 2, 1, 2, and the people who got the sugar pill, they reduced by like 1, and they're like 5, 6, 7, then you know that something occurred. In this gender affirming care studies, I'm just wondering, like, was there a control group? Did they say, okay, there's 100 people here, let's say 50% of them get it, 50% of them don't get it, and then we'll compare them? Or did they just look at it before and after, and then how are we figuring out what the actual cause of this change in the number was? Understand where I'm getting at here?
I do, and I think the answer there are lots of different ways to perform these studies, right? But I think you're getting at isolation of variables and removal of confounding variables, and what's your group selection process? Is it a meta-analysis as opposed to a direct analysis? And I'd say all those things.
Okay. What
It's
what
some degree of
is
every one of those processes.
of all the studies that are out there? And you don't have to describe
Mhm.
one. You don't have to give a study number. Don't do any of that. But what is the one with the best methodology? Can you describe it at all?
I mean, it would depend on the context, on the circumstances, I think. I mean,
Okay.
meta-analyses are done because they have lots of other research that's been done and they can statistically analyze lots of those other researches and results.
Hmm.
So things have to exist prior to be able to do a meta-analysis. I don't know if there is one best way. It's going to depend on the circumstances. I think a lot of this data is collected what they would call verbally, like it's just talking to people and getting their feelings on things. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of these circumstances lie, because that's what our psychology is. It's not always something that someone can put a finger on and say this is exactly it. you know so I'd say if somebody talks about suicidality, for instance, they have a certain chance of following through with it, and that's up to their care team to determine the best they can their risks and what to do about it, and hope they don't follow through, or whatever. um, does that make sense? I'm not trying
Yeah.
to evade you. I think you want a specific answer, but there isn't one. I'm not going to be able to tell you like this study is the objectively best way, or this process is the objectively best way to do this particular analyses. It's probably complicated and all over the place with
Yeah.
various mechanisms of performing them. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not a specialist in the field either, so I'm not going to speak to how these analyses are performed. Um, I generally listen to the specialists. I read about them. I try to read the opposition too. I listen to people like Mia Hughes and stuff, and it's too easy to, in my opinion, dismiss a lot of the misinformation that gets spread around. Um,
I think this is where we
like autogynephilia, for instance.
I think this is a fork in the road
So,
where like I look at these studies, and I understand the conclusion that they are coming to, but I do question their methodology of how they're arriving at that conclusion. And if that methodology is really as robust as many people think that it is. And
Mm,
I would like to see one where it's like there is this control where they take these individuals who are preferably I would like to see a children's study where these children are desiring this gender affirming care. And let's say their parents just don't want it. It's denied, rubber stamp denied by their parents, which that does occur. So this a study could be done ethically, and instead of having gender affirming care because they can't, that they are given, psychological care. So we're talking about CPT, we're talking about wellness care, we're talking about whatever types of therapy that might be the most beneficial. And then comparing that data of what the suicidality rate of that group versus the group that went through with the gender affirming care. And I would really want to see what that looks like. And of course, there's going to be
I
biases
got
because
some. Yeah, I got some news for you, brother.
Mhm.
Research is still going on. We're still collecting data. We're still learning.
Yeah,
You know, if it's that passionate a field for you, go into the industry. You know, um, I don't know what to tell you. That again, like you talk about these things as if they're not occurring. We have studies. Look, is any industry going to have its bad aspects? Yes. It seems that anything that exists can be spoiled by humans. And I don't think that's limited to just one thing or one particular area or anything that's. My question is when it starts to fall into the morally guided area of all of a sudden I'm starting on terms of this is just bad for you, period. And it doesn't make sense to me, so therefore it shouldn't make sense to you or other people shouldn't feel like it makes sense. Especially when somebody doesn't really have
hmm.
direct experiences with these things, either vicariously through loved ones or friends going through circumstances, or maybe having your own questioning. I don't know. Um,
I think it might be
so yeah,
a difference of how we are viewing when to be skeptical. I think that might be the difference. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm saying be skeptical of you know the the data and the studies because they can be mistaken about the outcomes. Experts can be mistaken
I
about
think
the
I
outcomes.
think you just described the scientific process. Like part of the scientific process is to be skeptical in everything. It's never to just accept an answer and not continually see if that answer is consistent. The more we know, like sometimes we think we know things for a long time and we get new knowledge and we go back and test something and we're like, hey, that doesn't work anymore. So that's not right, you know? But
If
being
they're
skeptical is like part of that process. That no one's saying don't be skeptical. I think that's another misnomer, another problem that there's some lack of skepticism there that makes people take unsafe, unsecure behaviors. I mean, part of the other problem here we haven't even talked about is historical affect, patriarchal societies that are Calvinist or uh, Abrahamist that have these particular notions, and there's still overwhelming notions in our day today that like society, is men and women, and men and women have babies, and that's what they should do. And I'm not saying that's everybody's views, but this has been an overwhelming theme for a lot of our history. A lot of our recent history, I'd say, maybe distant, it starts to get a little bit muddy there. I would say it absolutely gets muddy, and we're learning it's muddier and muddier. But anyways, yeah, so it's those judgments that kind of influence how we feel about the way people should feel about themselves. I don't know. I think I got lost there.
Okay. Hmm.
I still don't get it. Like, um, again, we have evidences of people who have been non-gender normative, conforming, whatever you want to call it, have been in great circumstances with supportive families who have been completely happy through their entire process and never had a problem. So they haven't needed things like psychotherapy, because they generally are happy, whatever you want to qualify as productive people, and that's not a small portion of these of people who are like this. Then you break down the other portions of the people who are stuck in situations that don't support them, and there's all kinds of ramifications of that. A lot of that is just a lot of the care today is just backing out that damage that is done, the generational damage of expectations of you versus how you feel, in my opinion. But
Hmm.
does that make sense?
Yeah.
Probably not to Veronica. I seem not to make any sense to Veronica at all.
That's
That's
okay.
fine.
I love Veronica. Sometimes
Yeah, yeah, she's
she
cool.
gets hung up on a few words. She likes words. She's a lot like Taylor.
Yeah.
Mm.
I was just talking about linguistic fundamentalism with people to someone today. That there's this spectrum of people who think that words have one meaning and there's no nuance and difference in interpretation. And, I'm definitely the opposite of that. I will break you down in nuance. And if you don't like that, you probably won't like me. So,
I think Veronica's gonna roast me here because I kind of roasted her. Oh
mm-mm.
no, she wasn't. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that. That was
Yeah,
actually kind of
Veronica,
a
I
mean
also,
dig.
maybe I didn't share, I only shared this with Pierce earlier today. I'm having a bit of an off day and very, I have poor focus issues to begin with. So I wander and ramble sometimes and I get off track, and that's just a quality of me. And I apologize for that. That's why I'm trying to be patient and walk through these things with Pierce. And I'm glad he's being very patient with me. He's been very generous and gracious, and I really appreciate that. Um, So, anyways, not to digress, you want to take that to a different direction and try and guide me in
I'd like
the
to.
the herd of cats that I am.
I'd like to actually, if someone's willing to just come up on and have their thoughts for a moment. I think this might be a good little segue to that. If anybody's willing, I'd like to
Mhm.
talk to Evan. Honestly, I've never talking with him in voice, but we've gone back and forth in text a lot. So it'd be nice to hear from him. But I don't know if he's willing.
Yeah, I expected to do better with my presentation today, but I'm just having a really bad day. So,
Yeah, it happens.
apologies. Yeah, I'm an old, decrepit man, so my body's failing me. Apologies.
I've been feeling that way recently, but today is a good day. Today is a
I'm
beautiful
glad.
day.
I'm glad to hear that. You said you were having some success in finding what's wrong with you and all that. I hope that works out for you. So,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Hmm.
So, where did we leave off? Did we get stuck at like what treatment is maybe, and what current treatment is? Like, I think you have an understanding of treatment to me that tells me you haven't experienced it a lot. Like, you haven't actually been heels to the ground in maybe a therapy clinic there, or in clinical environment or whatever, people who have to go seek these things, what they have to go through. I mean, I can tell you years of process through my sister, and she wasn't 40 years old until she realized she was gender dysphoric.
Hmm.
These are not easy processes. They are long,
Yeah.
laborious, and they can vary depending on the doctors that you get to. I'm absolutely not qualifying all doctors for making the proper decisions for people. Some doctors are horrible and just are enabling. I have a sister-in-law who is in counseling for a children's hospital. She was, because of recent government funding cuts, she got let go. But which sucks because that means children go without care that they're getting. But she says there is a lot of malpractice in the industry of gender affirming care too. It's just a thing that comes along with humans. But yeah, again, I don't want to bang that into the ground, but I think the data speaks mountains over the flaws of the industries. speaks volumes, if you will.
If you don't mind, I'd like
So,
to be that guy to steer the train in a different direction. I'd like to actually go back to a
sure,
previous stop. Um,
sure.
okay, cool. So we were talking earlier about how gender is connected to, I called it brain chemistry. Those were my words. And how that brain chemistry influences one to want to change physical characteristics, attributes, things about their body.
Hmm.
And instead of asking you about, like, I think we went down the route of, I asked, like, how do we know that's going to make them feel better? And you brought up, like, the studies. I would like to ask a completely different question here. If you could, if you could change the brain chemistry to, instead of having that discomfort, to change that chemistry so it would be comfort, would that be a better option than doing the changing the physical characteristics about the body?
It sounds like a red pill, blue pill option. Like if I could give somebody the blue pill to just accept who they are and be satisfied and not care what other people want them to do, but yet also not do the things that they feel they want to do and just be happy with who they are. That would be kind of the blue pill option. And the red pill option would be like the other stuff you're talking about, like making gender affirming care available to people who might need it. Or maybe more, yeah, that would be a bit of a straw man there, but maybe a bit of a more quantitative gender affirming care. Maybe I think it sounds like you'd like to retract some sort of services. Just be more hesitant, I'd say, not retract, but like be as absolutely sure as possible that somebody needs, say, for instance, hormone replacement therapy. If you're going to give it to them, like you want to be like as positively sure as you can possibly be, is what it sounds like to me. Is that fair?
I mean, yes, but that wasn't actually what I was going for.
Mm, mm,
um,
mm, mm, mm.
let me try to back it up here. Like, I
All right,
was
all
going
right.
for a very, very, very low level, like not even anything about policy related. Just like, hey, here's a person who is going through a thing. If you were God himself, what would you do? Like, would you just make it
Mm, mm.
so that brain chemistry connects and it brings a joy instead of frustration? Or would you
Mm.
say click your hands and just change the physical characteristics so that the brain chemistry uh it so that they're happy with their current brain chemistry, I guess.
Interesting. I think I see what you're getting at, and I want to try and dig this apart. I mean, first of all, the ability to make such a choice, to just say, let's just flip a switch and make a person happy with who and what they are, be it God, whatever. I don't know how to answer that, but I don't also want to not engage with the hypothetical. If I could flip a switch and make everybody happy, I don't know if that's the best thing in the whole world to just do that in that way. Wouldn't that, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that really. That's like, I don't even know how to answer that. Of course, I think I'd want to make someone happy if they were sad in an isolated circumstance. If I could just flip a switch and say, you're sad with whatever your circumstances are, boom, I'd love to make you happy. Yes. Do I want that for everybody? I don't know. That's a more complicated question. Especially since I think most of the unhappiness comes from other people's judgments upon them and not necessarily their judgments of themselves. They're generally, I think people in these circumstances understand what they are feeling and what their desires are. I think some of them may be confused and might make bad decisions. I think there's evidence of that. People of regret. I think that's what they call it. It's regret in the services. And I understand the statistics of regret are low in gender affirming care, body changes, puberty blockers, yada yada yada. So does that answer the question at all? Like, yes, of course, I'd make someone happy if I could. with who and
Yeah,
what they are.
I think it
Yeah.
does. I'd like to explain why I asked that question. And it will be probably a bit of vulnerability and openness on my end. So I appreciate you being patient here with me gathering how to say
Hey, you
this.
too, man. You're helping me too, man. I appreciate it. So
So I asked it as so I pretended to be like a god hypothetical. And with regards to, like changing the brain chemistry, that was kind of a stand-in for if someone could use a different strategy to be satisfied with their life circumstance, would that be preferable to someone changing their physical body to satisfy their current strategy? And I would want someone to try changing their current strategy to fit to uh, go from despair to joy. Hopefully that would be the goal anyways. If you can change your
mhm.
strategy there, like boom, like that's I think that's there's no side effects there, hopefully, unless your strategy is off the wall. If your strategy is harmful, then don't use that strategy either. But if you can change your strategy, I would prefer that to rather than changing your body to fit your current strategy. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll explain it more if you need.
Do you mind if we? Well, yeah, I have a lot of questions actually.
Yeah, feel free.
All right, so change your strategy. I think you're defining something we could call in psychology cognitive behavioral therapy reframing. Again, I think these are all coexisting services, right? This is not something that is
Maybe.
separate, like you go through this and this is what I'm trying to get at. It's not a single thing where you say, well, here's the pinnacle, here's the top tier, like you've reached gender affirming care level. There's a step below that somewhere that says, no, you shouldn't need this, and this should only be used in the most dire circumstances. Um, I mean, I think all of that is kind of calculated into the system personally. It's like their doctors are working directly with them and trying to interpret what's going on with them from a physical and a psychological perspective. I got to tell you, being in the medical industry a lot because I'm chronically ill, there's a lot of times a disconnect between what's going on psychologically and what's going on medically, physically, chemically. Um, but it's again, it's a whole set of services, so it's not something that I think you sacrifice on. It's something that you use if you need it, and it should be available to you if you need it. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think I see. I think I understand where you're coming from. I think I understand what you're
Like,
saying.
I don't need it. Yeah, I don't need it, for instance, so it doesn't bother me. Like, I want people to get the services that can help them and have the best chances of helping them. That's the way I feel about it, you know. Um,
Yeah,
and
that's
having
incredibly
personal
admirable.
anecdote, yeah, and having personal anecdotal experiences of successes of people who are successful through the processes and generally happy, productive people, whatever you want to qualify or quantify that as. Um,
Okay. Okay,
does that make sense?
yeah, it does make sense. Do we understand each other? I think we do.
I think so. I mean, I still don't understand where the heavy question comes from. Why the heavy question of, like, it still seems to me you're on the side of that it's more harmful than good.
Yeah,
And
maybe.
maybe different degrees. Like maybe the physical change stuff is more harmful than good versus the psychological stuff. Psychological stuff makes sense. Everybody struggles with psychological issues, and it doesn't have quote unquote visible forceful changes on your exterior, on your body, on your biology, whatever. When in reality, it really does, honestly, because everything's constantly changing up there. Psychotherapy changes you chemically, probably. Well, not probably. It does. Knowing our neuronal networks and feedback systems and all, we're constantly changing and fluctuating. So I'm not. Yeah. Again, I don't understand why it's on the side of like you shouldn't do these things. And here's another example. I've heard people talk of like I used to be gay and non-conforming, and I wanted to make changes to my body, and then I figured out how to be happy with myself. So everybody else should do the same thing. That's where the problem comes in. It's the prescription, right? It's like now because I did this, everybody else should do this.
Hmm.
Because I don't feel gender non-conforming, and I feel like personally, like maybe it's a visceral thought. Is it a visceral thought for you? Like the changes that it would do on your body are kind of aberrant. So when you think about it, then you apply that negativity in response to say, I wouldn't want this done to me, so I don't think other people should really want that done to you. I mean, I totally get that. I would hate to have my private parts cut off. I'm pretty attached to them. I like them. I'm pretty happy with. Well, all right, that's questionable, but I'm happy with who I am and what I am. But
I
my
gotta wait.
sister went through this, so it's something I can't understand, but I don't have to understand. I don't have to understand. I won't know or understand what she's going through or what the other people are going through. I can't apply my own logic to that because I'm not experiencing what they're experiencing. Have you ever heard of Plato's cave? This is some ancient
Mhm.
wisdom, and it's very relevant very often. Um,
You got like the three guys in the
I don't know.
cave. They can't see outside. They only can see the shadows. Yeah.
Sure, there's a lot of stuff around that. Like, they only know what they see and experience, and then one person leaves and goes experiences the world, and then they have to come in and convince everybody inside that there's a whole world out there and it's different. And they're like, no, this is all we know, and this is all it is, and these are you're changing tradition. It's all that nonsense that we play with these things, in a sense.
I don't. So I do want to answer your question, and I'm going to answer it before I forget what it was. So I think you were
Okay.
saying like, do you think that it's harmful because uh, you wouldn't need this care, and it would be harmful for you to take this treatment, this medical procedure, whatever. So it's kind of like almost an empathy thing where it's like, yeah, I don't really think that is the case, at least not directly. Like I
Not for
understand
you. So you
that.
you don't viscerally feel like changing your body in these ways is kind of like unnatural, and then maybe reflect that back on those circumstances with other people who want to make changes that you just can't understand.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay.
At
Well,
least
fair enough.
not in the short term anyway. Like
Mm.
I'm pretty confident that if I were to have my genitals removed, I would regret that tomorrow. That I can be really confident
Sure.
about.
But
For
that
someone
wouldn't be your
else,
choice, right? You
no,
wouldn't choose to do
no, I
that.
wouldn't choose to
So
do that.
yeah.
No, no, no. But if someone was choosing to do that, they probably wouldn't regret that the next day. I can definitely foresee that. I mean, it's possible. It's totally possible that
It
they
is
would.
possible. It's absolutely possible. I don't want to
But I
deny
would.
the fact that surgeries hurt and there can be surgery regret and all that, but it's
Mhm.
usually, I think, statistically small percentages of regret. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's less likely that there will be regret the first day, second day, a month, a year.
Yeah, I
However,
don't know what
I
the
think it
statistics.
I think it might be more difficult if we're talking, 25, 20, 25, 30 years down the road. I think it's hard for someone to predict whether they will be regretful or if they'll be, satisfied with the decision they made, that long ago with such a, you know, life-changing decision. That seems
But
very
why
difficult.
why would you why would you why would you err on the side of waiting 30 years and possibly regretting a choice you could have made a long time ago versus I have the chance to make a change that I think is my autonomous right that I can choose, and I may be wrong, but I feel like this is the right choice. And then maybe statistically later on down the line they're happy.
I
They're
would
happy generally with their choices. So
I would want to wait at least until a level of maturity is reached to where one can completely understand that 30 years is a long time,
Mm.
that that understand all the changes in life you go through. Like when you're going from like 6 years old to like 12 years old, that's like 6 years. And that's like almost your whole life, right? That's like
Mhm.
50% of your life. And you think that's the longest time ever, right? But then as an adult, going from, 2018 to today, no, 2019 to today, I can't do math. No? Yeah, that's right. I know what year we're in. Anyways, like that's a very short period of time, and we kind of, I mean, by our standards, like maybe you more. You think that's even a shorter period of time than me, and I don't know. I think we should get a level of maturity, kind of have more life experiences, have a good sense of time, and just figure shit
All right.
out
So
before we're
then
making those decisions.
let me ask you a pointed question. Then you have a child who's just about to go through puberty and doesn't feel right in their body and want to go on puberty blockers because they know that your gender dysphoria is going, or at least they have the inkling that there are changes of their body they're not happy with. So their gender dysphoria is statistically going to get worse. And you can live that out by watching them and talking to them and experiencing it with them as a therapist or a professional as they go through it and make that judgment. Is it a critical decision in that moment? Is that like, I don't see what's wrong with that, especially if you first, again, they have guardians, they have stewardship generally, they have doctors who monitor their health and are making sure that they're making the proper decisions as best that they can. Again, what are better measures that we have to go off of? Please explain to me what's a better measure to go off of that what we know statistically. Your feeling, someone else's feeling, not what we know by the data and most objectively. Does that make sense?
Hmm. I'm trying to understand what you're asking here. What
I
is
mean,
a
I'm asking
better?
why is the data not as important as your feelings on the subject, or more important, I should say?
Well, I think we
Because I think
disagree.
you question the source of the data, I guess is part of
Yeah,
it, right? You
yeah.
question the sources of the data. Yeah. Scientific skepticism,
Well, I would say the
by the
source,
way,
just to be
which
clear, it would be the quality of the methodology that the data arrived at.
mm,
But
mm.
maybe you're saying that.
Well, no, I guess what I said earlier was I don't think if you have enough personal experiences with it to make that judgment. I don't think I have enough experiences to make that judgment. I think people who know better than us and study those areas have a consensus, and that is the best measure we have. I don't know of a better measure.
How do we figure out what?
I hate to be hyperbolically metaphorical, but are we going to go on feels of how to get to Mars, or are we going to kind of run the statistics and do the statistical analysis and trajectory calculations and with the best evidence that we have, which is data, physics, you know, um, does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're. I think I understand what you're getting at. Uh, like, my my question would be like you're asking me what would be way to another method of figuring out which is the best.
Yeah, what's a better tool of
And
measure? What's a better way to measure the the potential outcomes, try and predict the outcomes, That's what we're doing really. We're using statistics to try and do the best we can to make predictive analysis, you know.
yeah, I think the best way to do that would be kind of what I described earlier, where it would be we'd have a control and have it be
a lot of as much data as we can and go from there.
But no, right, but you're saying hold off on certain things or maybe retract certain things until we have more data, better understanding, I think is what I'm gathering.
Yeah.
Which in turn would turn out to be less gender affirming care for people, and we know that has statistically has negative outcomes.
Well, you're saying that a study like that would be unethical. Is that kind of what I'm gathering?
No, study all you want. Just don't take away care. Like we
Yeah.
should improve
Yeah, we're on the same page here.
and
Okay.
help care. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But hold on. You said wait until a certain age for things like puberty blockers, hormone therapy. That is removing care. That is effectively removing care. That is considered important today.
if their parents decline it, like if they're saying no, no matter what, like they can't be convinced otherwise, would that be removing care or just it is what it
If
is?
their parents say no, so their parents tell them, I think that's a tough one. That's a tough one that has to kind of be navigated with the doctors, with, I mean, look, I got to tell you, a lot of parents today aren't qualified to be parents, unfortunately, in my opinion.
Should should we at
It's an
least
unfortunate, and so
use that as an opportunity for a study to learn?
I mean, I don't know when I ever said don't study, don't learn. That's my overt thing is study, learn, collect data, do statistical analysis on data, and go basically with the best measure, which is what the evidence says. And insofar as providing care, try and provide opportunities to everyone if they need it to the best level and degree of care, which is like, if this is what you need, here's the best way to go about it that we know evidentiarily, you know?
So I want to be I want to go on a little tangent because I just read
Okay.
something in the text chat here that sparked something in my brain. So it was actually something that I forgot how to pronounce their username. The Scoop. And
Let's go.
yeah, she said something. She said puberty is effed up, especially for girls, in my opinion. The transition from child to adult is painful, especially if you didn't have a great childhood. You're losing something you never had, and it almost like I don't know why I even read the comment because it kind of I went on a different path here. So while I do agree with that statement, no, Windows, I do not want to update my password. Really? Now is not the time.
On the note of puberty, are you familiar with precocious puberty?
I don't know.
Okay, so precocious puberty is kind of a medical condition outlined by early pubescent development, and it often statistically ends up in a lot of complicated situations for kids who go through it at young ages. And there are normalized treatments for this that are hormone replacement therapies to delay puberty.
Oh, okay.
This isn't necessarily in question because this is effectively what the gender affirming care side does as well. It just applies hormones to delay development until somebody has a better ability to make a more informed decision of how they want to carry forward with their life without going through the permanent changes of their body of pubescent development.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yep.
But it's not precocious puberty treatment that's in question. It's gender affirming care that's in question. That would be the hypocrisy.
Okay. Well, this will actually tie into that at least a little bit. What was on my mind when I was reading that. So, if there is a child who's about to go through puberty, and
yeah, I'm using generalized terms. I don't know how to pronounce your name, Sepir. Yeah, you could be right about hormone, but some sort of treatment for precocious puberty. And again, for some forms of gender affirming care, they use these similar hormone therapy treatments, whatever it is. But it's only in question because it's gender affirming care. It's not precocious puberty, if you will. That's the hypocrisy I was trying to point out, not the details of what the particular treatments are, but it's all kind of hormone related, if you will.
Okay. Back to what I was um, trying to export from my brain before my computer so rudely interrupted.
Mm.
So we have these kids who are making a prediction. They're expecting that the changes to their bodies in puberty are going to cause extreme discomfort, or at least a level of discomfort. And because of this discomfort, maybe perhaps even extreme discomfort, one of the strategies is to use puberty blockers for the time being. That way they will not experience puberty, and they will not, in their own prediction, they will not experience the discomfort. And I guess what I'm wondering is, like, they are making this prediction. They are thinking, I am going to dislike this. I'm going to hate this. Do we know if that prediction is accurate? How would they know if that, how would anybody know if that prediction is accurate?
We don't. That's why statistical analysis is the best measure we have, because there's no absolutely predicting any outcome. It's always usually like, let's try this, see if this works. But statistically, we know these particular things tend to work. Are they going to absolutely work for everyone? No. Again, it seems like you're trying to draw a line of, like, we have to have our thumb on the absolute cause to treat it. Otherwise, don't treat it because it's too risky. I mean, by whose risk? By what terms is risk okay for you to take on in your life versus someone else's autonomous choice to make their own? Did you ever do any rebellious things when you were a kid which were against your parents or your better, your superiors or your guardians? Was it an autonomous choice that you made to do something that might have been necessarily dangerous or not acceptable or wrong, or however you want to frame it?
Sure.
I don't know how to get around, like, we have to trust. There's no better way but to trust what we can feedback with people and read what, with the best measures of how they're feeling and how to treat what they're feeling. Or if it's possibly something that's physically treatable for some other reason, maybe we have a more targeted response to it. But all that is going to depend on a lot of context.
I think I don't think we necessarily need to know the cause at all. Like, I know in depression, we don't necessarily know the cause. There's some speculation. We kind of maybe might know, but a lot of times with these medications, we don't know exactly what they're doing. But we do know that sometimes they work, right? And we can analyze that data. I think more so what I'm saying is not that we don't know the cause, therefore we shouldn't have a treatment. I think we should know that the treatment is just as good as no treatment or the alternatives.
I'm not so sure I followed you. Like, again, we're back to like, and I hate to boil it down, but it's what you're feeling versus what the best measure tells us in these circumstances. And it's well beyond that. Like, other sciences inform some of the treatments and understandings of human behavior that are much longer term. Like, human behavior in and of itself, primatology informs us of a lot of human behavior. And, that's just one example of study where primates display the same behaviors, non-conforming behaviors that we do. We just have more different complex ways to handle them because we have technology that they don't, and understanding. So, yeah, I don't know how someone feels over it is more important than, or how someone else feels about a person versus how they feel about themselves, and what the science, what the medicine and the support care systems tell us about those treatments. I don't see a better measure than that. And if you have it, tell me, because it sounds like I don't agree with it, so I'm not going to go with what the best measure says.
I'd like to actually
Is that
put out. I'd like to put out a hypothetical here,
sure? Sure.
just to see if this is the reason why I'm asking. I'm seeing if in this hypothetical, if you would, what you would do, and if and this is a science hypothetical, so if you would follow the science, then if this is going to tell me if it's really about the science. So let's say there in this hypothetical, there was they were all 12 to 14-year-old kids seeking gender affirming care. They were decided to be part of the study. And there was like 200 total kids, 100 of them received no gender affirming care, but maybe they received other types of care like CBT, psychotherapy, stuff like that. And let's say the suicidality rate was 4%. And then we had the other 100, they received gender affirming care. Let's say they received all the other stuff, and their suicidality rate was 5%. In this hypothetical situation, would Brian decide that they should go with the first group? That should be generally the path we should go with these kids, or is it the second path?
I mean, it sounds like you boiled it down to more or less suicide. I would obviously vie on the side of statistically less suicide.
Okay.
Right? Okay. It doesn't matter what those circumstances. If by the future we find out that some forms of gender affirming care are bad, more negative outcomes than positive outcomes, which, by the way, I don't think we have that right now, then yes, we should change. That's part of the scientific process, to realize our understandings change. And when our understandings change, lots of other stuff can change along with that. And we should remain skeptical. We shouldn't ever kind of seat ourselves in final understandings of things.
Yeah, and I'm on the same page as you. I agree with you. I would be in the same boat as you with this, assuming that I thought it was a rock solid science, and the same would be if it flipped around the other way or something. Although I would want to go like 30 years down the road as well. But
what would qualify as rock solid science for you? Would it have to be as rock solid as, say, physics?
Is that a metaphor?
Well, no, I'm trying to decide where rock solid is for you, because we have rock solid sciences that do these studies that aren't considered hard sciences. They're obviously, there's less degrees of predictability in that, but they still have heavy degrees of predictability based on a lot of features that even cross over in things like biology, neurobiology, endocrinology, yada, yada, yada. So
I guess my requirements would be a real control, and not one of those controls where it's like the same subject and it's just kind of a before and after, because we don't know, if we can't figure out.
Sorry, man. If you're going to talk about a study like that, I need to see it, because I need to understand. You can't just arbitrarily talk about a study that's done in poor practice that you think exists out there metaphorically. I can't go there, because it would take a lot of. Right. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was talking about a hypothetical study, not one that exists.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying, though. Even if it's hypothetical, hypotheticals are there to kind of as a thought process. They're not to sort of establish a truth, right?
I thought you asked me what I would be convinced by. Obviously, I haven't been convinced by anything, so it has to be a hypothetical. Otherwise, I would already have switched sides.
All right. So, all right, good point. Let me rephrase by saying, pick a science that's closer to what you would consider rock solid, that could be comparative to something that you would be happy with.
Sure. I would say, I guess physics is pretty straightforward, or chemistry, like mixing hydrogen, oxygen, you get water. Yeah, it happens.
You want a formula?
See it happen. Yeah.
Right, right. All right. So can I do can I make a metaphor here? I always bring up this metaphor is the chess metaphor. The chess has what, 32 pieces on a 64-piece board.
Okay.
And though we know there are finite pieces and finite number of spaces on the board, and it's obvious that there are finite number of moves and to get to a winning scenario, any winning scenario, for instance. Yet computers with our most calculability can't predict every circumstance and absolutely win in every circumstance with chess. Today they have a long streak going, so yeah, it's getting closer. But again, now you apply this metaphor to human brains and neurobiology, neurochemistry, all the stuff going on up in there with 80 billion neurons that could have millions of axons and dendritic connections and all those various it's something you call irreducibly it's calculate. I can't even say the word. You can't calculate it. It's irreducible because it's so complex.
We can't simulate a human brain.
Right. We can't predict human behavior based on these factors because it's what drives those behaviors but we do have correlations, right? And then you start to back from those correlations into other sciences like psychology. I mean, yeah, psychology is considered a soft science because of that exact notion. We can't connect every mechanism of neurobiology to every behavior in psychology today. Mm-hmm. Genetically, physically, whatever, however you want to break it down. So if you're waiting for, in my opinion, if you're waiting for something as solid as physics to solve the problem of why people have these issues, I don't know if we're ever going to get there. I mean, look, we have some technologies today that are pretty fascinating, like optogenetics, epigenetics, that are doing and potentially predict some pretty amazing things. And we could get down to the point where we could nearly absolutely prove that everything is physical and everything is chemical and biological, and we're headed that direction, I think. We're not there yet. We're not anywhere close. So to wait for stuff like that, people suffer in the interim if you're removing care from them, I guess is what I'm getting at. So in the interim, if you're waiting for a function or an algorithm or something that's going to solve these problems absolutely for everybody, and then until then, refrain from giving certain people hormone replacements, puberty blocking drugs, whatever it is. People are suffering in those times quantitatively. We know this statistically. That can be helped. Some of them can be helped. Why wouldn't we do that?
So we are talking past each other. When I answered your question about what science would be, really conclusive, I thought of the most conclusive possible thing I could think of, and I provided that.
All right. So right. I was saying pick a science that's closer to what you would trust in those realms. That's what I was saying. Closer to the amount of rigor, let's say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm not really sure how to answer that question though.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's an impossible question to answer. That's kind of what I was getting at, right? For just those irreducibly calculable ways, like we can't calculate human behavior based on these factors. So we use statistics. It's the best we have. And are some studies on rocky foundation? Yeah, a lot of the WPATH stuff that Mia Hughes likes to spout is on some very rocky foundation. Are other studies good? Yes, there are many good studies that give us a lot of good data and information qualitatively. People who we know statistically have collected and checked in with them after years and said they're still enjoying their choices. Is there a level of regret? Yes, obviously.
What
should we err on the side of? Should we err on the side of allowing more people to regret, or should we try and reduce the long-term regret? That would be a harm reduction principle, right?
Run that by me again.
So in other words, if most people don't regret their choices, why would we want to err on the side of more people possibly regretting not making a choice?
Gotcha. Yeah, where we differ on that is I don't think we have very good long-term data at this point. We might in a matter of like 5 to 10 years. Um, but as of right now, I don't think we have very good long-term data.
You can keep talking. I'm going to question real quick, look for some data, see if I can
Okay,
find
that's
something.
good. Um, what what I was going to ask, before you started looking, was how do we determine what a good study looks like or what a bad study looks like? Like you said, the WPATH studies, there's maybe some junk studies in there. What's the difference between them?
All right. Well, just to throw some statistics out here real quick, gender studies started somewhere back in the 70s, branching off of women's studies, feminist theory. We have data from the 1950s and 60s on transsexualism,
What
outdated terminology,
was it on
psychiatry.
gender?
Well, so what we knew as gender problems back then, transsexual phenomenon, for instance. But all those terminologies are kind of outdated today. And then, for instance, like more long-term studies that you might be happier with start in like the 90s, which is what 20, 35 plus years from now. That's decades worth of studies. Minus the stuff that we had to feed in previous to that, minus the fact that we have history that talks about
Was
transgender, non-gender normative people across thousands of years of history. Yeah.
in the 90s, was this gender affirming care studying or was it just gender in general? You know?
I think the fields are being refined, is what's happening. We still have legacy data that gets reclassified, just like in psychology and the DSM, things sometimes get categorized out, recategorized, reclassified, blah, 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 moved around, different understanding. Gender studies is making those same evolutions. And yeah, we're having a lot. And look, people often talk about the phenomenon of more gender non-conforming people emerging today and it becoming more of a problem. I look at it from the point of we're getting better at detecting and diagnosing and understanding people. Is it the big worrisome phenomenon that everybody thinks they need to worry about? No, it's like a very small portion of society, apparently. Is a lot of that going to change? Yeah, I think a lot of people's real true feelings and behaviors are hidden from the public. It's a lot of like closeted, closed door behaviors that exist because other people don't like it or make them feel uncomfortable. So could lots more be uncovered potentially? Yeah, and then we just find out better, more detailed ways to classify it, and people would fight against it because men and women and yada yada yada, blah blah blah. You know, reproduction, whatever you want to say.
Okay. There's a little bit said there. Um, I'm wondering about these whatever information or studies in the 90s. Is that like was this regarding gender affirming care and like drugs, hormones, or
Yeah, my question was related to gender dysphoria, which is basically the root of most of the impetus behind most gender affirming care starts roughly around gender dysphoria or on discomfort with your biological phenotypical expressions versus your inside feelings of those expressions.
okay. So I think we may have talked past each other a little bit when I am referring to, long-term studies. I'm specifically talking about gender affirming care and what, like, let's say a person in, for simplification, let's just say the year 2000, they start gender affirming care. I want to know where they're at in 2030, 2040. So rather than just studies about gender or about gender
Or do
dysphoria.
you want to know about where they are now? Maybe. And instead of 2030 and 2040. Are you saying we need to wait until 2030 or 2040
If
before
if they began care in the year 2000, right? Or actually, probably not that long. I would say like if they are started care when they were 16, I want to know where they're at when they're like 35, 40.
Sorry, let me respond to Pine Creek, Doug. The scientific designation for it starts with gender dysphoria, and that is a scientific designation. And it has classifications of traits and behaviors. You know, like any kind of diagnoses within psychology, there's collections of traits and behaviors that lead to a diagnosis. So it starts with gender dysphoria. Yeah, it does exist. It's not objective. Nothing is objective in that sense. Again, we're talking about that reducibility, you know, of human behavior. We can't predict things, although we can make heavy predictions. I think one of the heaviest predictions is that if there is a low hormone presence in utero, has a heavy correlation to people with gender dysphoria. I think that's one of the strongest correlations we have. But still, I don't think it's a determinant. It's not a cause. It's kind of like one of the factors. If that makes sense. Anything in psychology is generally based about, I mean, yeah, we can do some genetic analysis today, and it's usually very not targeted, right? It's like, for instance, GeneSight, if anybody's gone through depression, antidepressant drugs or anything like that, or, you know, any kind of drug where GeneSight can help and tell you that your genetics statistically say that these drugs are better than these drugs, that you statistically will have better results from these. It's the same kind of thing. It's collecting numbers, and a lot of it is through word of mouth, like how a doctor interprets a patient feeling or what a patient fills out on a form or a survey. If it's, you know, private or whatever, that's where a lot of this data is collected from. I hate it. I get questioned at every turn at every doctor I go to. I have to fill out depression forms and blah, blah, blah. But I love the statistical analysis portion of it. It does provide helpful, useful things. Is it 100%? No. I don't think anybody's saying it's that targeted. If we had those answers, if we had the 100% answers, I think we'd use them. We don't. We generally try to go with harm reduction. We do what we think statistically, by the best measure, is the best thing to do for people in their particular circumstances. I don't know of any better way to do it. That's where I'm stuck. Like, you know, why wait when it says, or why reduce care or put more obstruction in the way of someone's care when we know statistically it has negative results? It's like taking fluoride out of water sources. We know statistically children, and this has been proven out through multiple studies, that kids get more tooth decay and more infections and sometimes die from them. Like, why would we make that choice?
If you were to come to the conclusion, and I'm talking about the fluoride studies right now, if you were to come to the conclusion that there was a flaw in those studies, that they were mistaken and so they did something wrong, they didn't go thorough enough, something. What would be your stance on the fluoride at that point?
I think again, you're picking at human ability to be flawed in everything we do. And I think maybe there's a level of skepticism that I don't understand, because what's beyond that skepticism besides just not acting on the best of our understanding, not doing things to the best of our understanding to help people in their circumstances?
Gotcha. Let me be a little more specific, because that was extremely broad. So
Okay.
let's say you got these studies and you found out that they were not comparing it to kids without any fluoride in their water. They're just looking at kids who do have
Confounding
fluoride.
scenarios. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they're finding that like let's say they didn't have any fluoride from ages 0 to the 10, and they had, one cavity, and then from ages 10 to 15, they started getting fluoride, and then they had 0 cavities. Zip, zilch, none. Would that be a reliable way to know that fluoride is like definitely should put it in our water? Assuming there's no negative side effects.
I mean, yeah, if kids are having less cavities, less infections, dying less from those things, or suffering less from those things, yeah, that would be what the research should indicate we should go. I don't know, but and that's basically what the statistics say today are with three major studies, I think in Calgary, like a couple places in Canada, Calgary, whatever, when they took fluoride out of water, that's what they had. They had increases in cavities, infections, deaths.
Okay.
So
Yeah. In that
are
point,
there other plans? But maybe this is a good question for you. Are there other plans that they could do to change that? Yeah, sure. I think RFK's plan is to like give out or to encourage better oral hygiene. Maybe use toothpaste that's higher in fluoride. Maybe take fluoridated substances, whatever, as supplements. The problem with that is it's money. These things generally benefit the poor, the impoverished, the people who can't afford to go out and buy the best tooth care or have dental care or things. So that's the trade-off you're making. You're taking fluoride out of the water, hurting the poor because you expect them to somehow make enough money to now treat their dental care better, which, lift society if you want that. Put social strata in there that makes everybody have proper dental health care and has proper access to tooth care things. Then take the fluoride out of the water. There you go. There's a solution for you.
Right. I'm gonna reel you back. I'm not saying that you're wrong on that conclusion. But let's go back to the few studies that I said, hypothetical. So we got the study saying like they studied them age 0 to 5, no fluoride, they had a cavity. Then from 5 to 12, they didn't have any. And you said just based off of that, you'd be like, yeah, let's put the fluoride in the water. How would we know?
No, I was just responding in general, saying
okay.
no. Well, I mean, what I said was my response. My response was if there is evidence that we can reduce cavities, reduce infection, reduce those things, that's the evidence we should go for because we don't have a better measure. It doesn't really matter how long it is. I mean, yeah, are we going to make mistakes in the short term? All right, here's another, well, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but COVID vaccine is another example, right? People freaked out because mRNA technology was implemented so quickly and people were very concerned about long-term impacts of COVID vaccines, you know. That's wrought with all kinds of issues, actually, tell you the truth, because we know we had 40 years of those studies and everything. It was just, and we were already using them in things like treating rabies for a decade or more. So we had statistics that they weren't really statistically harmful, and more helpful than they were harmful. So yeah, my point is not the details of the study and how it's done in the long term of it is like if we have people suffering now, yes, we have to continue to study for the future, but we also need a response to what's going on in the moment.
Okay.
Right? We can't just wait and delay, even if we don't know. Let's say a new virus, which is popping up now, emerged today. We don't know, but people are dying. We have to do something because people are dying, right? Are we just not we're going to wait 20 years and not do anything?
Okay. Brian.
Because we don't have enough data. I don't know. I don't know where you're going with that.
I'm gonna just fully disclose this. This is a trap. This is totally a trap. I'm setting you up for a trap. Just walk through it. Walk through the trap, and just burst out of it if you need to. Pick the lock.
I trust you, man.
Pick the lock.
I trust you, man.
Pick the lock here. So we got kids 0 to 5, one cavity without fluoride, 5 to 12 with one cavity. You don't know anything else. That's all you know. You don't even know English. Okay, maybe you know English, but that's all you know. There's no other data out there. Let's say they studied this a lot. Like there was 100 studies that replicated this. They know that after that age, if you give them fluoride water, they won't have another cavity. Would you bunch of studies with that? Do you think that all those studies combined that only tested that narrow little window, is that a good enough way to say like, yeah, fluoride all the way.
Well, if people are suffering and dying in that time and we have to make a choice, yes, we shouldn't just delay and let to collect. We should do what we can in the time, all right, another example is, what is it? What was the drug that was so thalidomide in Germany or whatever, that ended up with the thalidomide?
Let me close the trap here. Let me close the trap
Okay.
before we
all right,
continue.
All right.
All right,
Sure.
closing the trap.
I don't feel trapped, by the way, but go ahead. I don't feel trapped at all, but go ahead.
Okay, good. Okay. Like, with that being the case, how do we know that these kids just didn't grow up and able to brush their teeth better? Because from 0 to 5, it's the parent usually getting in there, and it's hard. Like, I'm a parent. It's hard. Like, open your mouth. Open your mouth. Keep it open. No, keep it open. You'll get a prize tomorrow if you keep your mouth open, But then after, maybe 5 years old, maybe they start to become more mature. They can really keep it clean. They can do a really good job now. So maybe that was the causation instead of the fluoride. Like, how would we know which could be the causation based on those studies?
I mean, I think it's good evidence when you take fluoride out of the water and cavities and infections and deaths go up is a pretty good analysis and understanding, and it directly correlates with removing fluoride from the water.
I'm not saying that's like maybe that's all true, like outside of this very narrow example. But within this very, very narrow example, is there a way for us to know?
Is there a way for us to know? Yes and no. Sometimes no. I was going to post an alternative hypothetical of sometimes people are just dying en masse and we need to do something, right? This is an extreme hypothetical. I wanted to go back to what Pine Creek Doug said about how many trans people dying from dysphoria, gender dysphoria, but which suicidality is a huge problem in that area, by the way. So death, yes. But back to your point. What was your point again? I lost it.
So we have these studies where it's like 0 to 5.
Oh, yes. Sometimes we have to do things in the moment and continue to study along the way while we're learning. We're going to make mistakes. Like sometimes our choices and decisions are going to be wrong. And that's just a consequence of learning an emergent phenomenon that we're not familiar with. The longer we know phenomenon that happen, like once an infection happens, once a problem occurs and we can track it long term, we can then do more reflection and understand better how to target solutions, treatments, whatever it is. But until then, like, do we just let people suffer? Is that your choice? Like, we don't do anything?
No, not necessarily. I mean, maybe.
Okay,
it depends.
Yeah.
So where I was going with this fluoride example is, in my opinion, from what I've read, that this example was very analogous to how gender-affirming care studies are conducted. And because there's not this other group that's being studied alongside of it, like it's really hard to say whether it was like the result of the gender-affirming care itself or the result of something else going on. Like in the fluoride example, it was just maturity, better bodily control, willing to listen to your parent. So that's, I just wanted to illustrate that so you could explain so I could explain where I'm coming from through that bit of a trap.
I mean, parenthood and helping kids with choices and going through it with doctors. If you think that I think that that's not treacherous and wrought with good and bad decisions, that would be a straw man of my representation.
And I'm not saying that.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying like, it's complicated, right? But that's why we have these services. That's why they emerged. They didn't emerge because somebody said we need these things for a problem that doesn't exist. It was a problem that existed, and services emerged to treat those problems.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I think that makes sense. I guess the only thing I would
That's why we put fluoride in water. It's why we put fluoride in water. We noticed, I think a while back, way back in history, that putting lithium in water generally helps overall societal happiness. Makes us all,
hallucinate
a little bit more elated. Microdoses, little tiny traces in water sources
have
and
it for
such. Yeah, yeah. Well, this is how we found out that lithium is good for treating things like bipolar disorder, extreme depression. I think that's kind of the history, the evolution of it. It was kind of come across by accident in some ways.
Interesting. Okay.
But fluoride being the same thing, probably, if I had to guess, like, heavy fluoride concentrations in water is notoriously aligned with people who have better dental health care, or dental well-being. And then we were like, oh, yeah, there you go. Let's put fluoride in the water to levels that are not harmful to humans generally. I will submit by your example that sometimes things can get out of hand and be in concentration levels that might be harmful. I think that's quite a rare scenario, and I think that's kind of understandable. Like, again, nothing is a black and white line. Look at Flint, Michigan. They don't have drinking water that's potable. So lots of things can happen there, but anyways, so yeah, did we kind of cover that? I'm sorry if I'm wandering.
I think so.
Oh.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't know, is there anything you'd like to go over that we haven't already?
No, not really. Look, man, I wanted to say this from the beginning, but I don't get involved in conversations to convince anybody of my view. I just wanted to talk through it with you. I know we've had our differences a little bit here and there, but I generally think you're a good guy. I like you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you giving me time, spending time with me. And that's all I really wanted to do was have a conversation about it, just to see if I could help. I don't know. Maybe that's just as absurd as me thinking, like you thinking that certain gender affirming cares are bad by default. Maybe it's no difference there in that biases. Does that make sense?
Maybe. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down in any case.
Yeah. But I'm not here to convince you. I'm not trying to tell you to believe like I believe, but yeah, that's it. It was a good conversation. I appreciate it, man.
If you've watched this far, you know what to do. Don't miss what's next. The choice is on you. Stay in the loop, keep your feet in line. Hit that bell, catch me live next time. It's simple, it's quick, but it means a lot. Stay connected, see the moves I've got. No promises, no fluff, just what's real. Subscribe and the update seal the deal. Subscribe, hit the bell and I'll see you. The stream's done now, but the content won't stop. So stay in the loop till I'm back at the top.